All right, here are your headlines for today. A slimmed-down second round of stimulus checks is included in a roughly $900 billion coronavirus relief deal announced by congressional leadership Sunday night. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced the agreement on the floor. It includes a $600 check for people who make up to $75,000 a year. And though that's the same income cap included in the March CARES Act, you'll notice the amount of this check is half of the $1,200 that was included then. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer both announced the details of the agreement early Sunday evening. In addition to the $600 check for adults, the deal also provides a $600 check per child. So massive issues when I've been looking at kind of the reaction to this check, not only with the amount of money, but also how Congress is speaking to us, to the public, to the American people. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley made the point that these $600 checks are not stimulus checks. She was basically like, this is not going to stimulate anything.
Exactly.
These are survival checks, and we need to continue to work on more. Nancy Pelosi is getting a lot of pushback today because she said she would have liked them to be bigger, but she did call these $600 checks significant. And people were kind of saying, hey, it looks like you're a little out of touch, because they wanted her to be more honest in their opinion about what this actually means. And something that was pointed out, people are pointing to the amount of money that Congress makes. Yeah. Right? Compared to the fact that this $600 for a lot of people, this is actually going to be eaten up in overdraft fees. If you haven't worked and you know what I mean, this is going to be eaten up in overdraft fees. And not only that, but some people owe $600 or more to one utility company.
I mean, the amount of money that the average American owes in back payments of rent, in utilities, car payments, etc., is unbelievable. Like Ayanna Pressley said, this is a joke. You know, it's not stimulating anything. And, you know, I think that Nancy Pelosi is being villainized, you know, because she's a scapegoat. It's really easy to pin the blame on her when the blame falls solely on Congress and Mitch McConnell. Like, that's just the truth of the matter. And you know what?
Wait, I have a question though about that, because I think that's a good point, because she can't help at all. She couldn't have helped this. We saw they were being completely stalled. Like, we're not going to do anything that you offer. But can she help how she speaks to us about it?
No, yeah, I mean, she could definitely. Maybe the choice of the word significant was a poor choice of word, but the reality of the situation is that she doesn't really have any power to exert over here. The reality of the situation is this bill was over 5,000 pages in length. There's no way that Congress went through each and every page to understand, you know, to really process what was going on here. And here's also what was involved in this bill. $500 million was designated for Israel for their defense industry. $2 billion for Air Force missile procurement, $4 billion for Navy weapons procurement, and $2 billion for Space Force. So this is where the lion's share of the $900 billion went. And in reality, since there's been 260 days between now and the first check, which means that $600 works out to $2.30 a day.
She's breaking it down.
I'm glad that I love that she is breaking it down, because I was going to make a small point. I read a tweet earlier that said $600 times 328 million people is only $196 billion. And it's a $900 billion package. So I'm glad Melissa broke it all down, because I was definitely going to say, where's the rest of the money going to?
Yeah,
Not
that's
to
true.
us.
And you got to think about our soulmates out there. They're thinking about getting this money. They're looking forward to it, but then knowing it's only going to last X amount of weeks gives you even more stress, because you worry about time running out. They should say, look, until June, until summertime, we're going to go ahead and make sure we send money out and we take care of all of our soulmates, those in America. And on top of that, remember when people were taking advantage of the system? What were they getting, like $600 a week every weekend? Some people feel like they were taking advantage.
I didn't feel like anybody was taking advantage.
I was just about to say.
That's what some people were saying.
I was one of those people
advantage, but I don't think.
That's what they should be doing now, though. That's the point I want to bring. What you did then, how are you not doing that now? Because people are so much deeper in the hole. They need that money now more than ever. So it has to definitely fix that. All right, newly elected Congresswoman Cori Bush was nominated to the House Judiciary Committee on Friday. Nominees were announced by the House Democratic Steering Committee and confirmed by Judiciary Chairman Representative Jerry Nadler of New York. Congresswoman Bush, and civil rights activist and community organizer who was fought for justice on these streets of Ferguson and across the country, will bring firsthand experience as the committee tackles systemic racism and criminal justice reform, Nadler's announcement read. Bush would join colleagues Congressman-elect Mondaire Jones of New York and Congresswoman-elect Deborah Ross of North Carolina's the newest committee members. I ran for office on the promise of justice, justice for black lives, justice for every community held back by racist systems and oppression. Bush tweeted on Friday, St. Louis, we are taking our fight from the Ferguson front line to the U.S. House Judiciary Committee. Love the story of Cori Bush. Look, you know what I'm saying? I'm from St. Louis. I'm proud of her. I knew what she did for the city of Ferguson. You know, she was assaulted by police while she was out there for the civil unrest. But prior to that, she was a registered nurse. She's a pastor. Now she's an activist. And now she became the first African-American woman, all right, to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives from Missouri. So she's accomplished a lot.
She's also
and you
part
know
of
what?
the squad.
Speaking of her accomplishments, she tweeted this, and I thought it was so interesting. She said, some people in my mentions are saying I need a law degree to serve on the Judiciary Committee. No degree can teach you what it feels like to experience an officer's boot stomping your head. The expertise of my community's lived experiences will drive my work. And we're finally at a place in this country where little by little, Congress is starting to reflect the lived experiences of our community.
Agreed, Brooke. One other thing that she also said, to piggyback off of what you were saying, it is a power that comes from the pain of being a survivor of sexual abuse and domestic violence, of having been unhoused, stomped by the police, and forced to live paycheck to paycheck. I'm really happy that, you know, our politicians are really starting to reflect the diversity and the, you know, the individual experiences of the average, you know, woman and man, you know, American, I should say.
Right.
And she's also part of the squad, which I've been also saying, that is Ayanna Presley, AOC, and Omar and Talib.
I just have to say that it is so empowering as a black woman to see women that look like us, because I feel like just, you know, years ago, a couple of years ago, even last year, we did not see this. So regardless of why all of our beautiful black women and men are getting these opportunities, none of that matters. I'm just really inspired to know and see all of these beautiful black people that look like me going into politics and fighting for our community. So I'm really happy to see that.
It's important to have someone like us in those seats. We say it all the time, because most people they're out of touch of what we go through, whether it's in our community, whether it's with the police, or whether it's just trying to survive. So I'm happy to see this St. Louis stand up for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Millions of Americans could be facing homelessness when the federal eviction moratorium expires on December 31st. Massive job losses were brought on by the coronavirus pandemic, and those losses accelerated a pre-existing housing crisis, which already disproportionately impacts Black and Latino households. More than 14 million American households are currently at risk of eviction and have accumulated an estimated $25 billion in rental debt. That $25 billion figure comes from a Stout report. And if you're not familiar, Stout is a global investment bank and advisory firm. Now, when the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention eviction moratorium expires, 4.9 million people are likely to get eviction notices in January. And I want to note that that would be just the head of the household. Many more people, I'll get to that number in a second. As CNN reports, people of color are most at risk of becoming homeless once the federal eviction moratorium expires. The federal moratorium was put in place September 4th by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It's estimated somewhere between 30 to 40 million Americans in total could eventually lose their homes once this moratorium expires. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition reports 80% of those vulnerable to the eviction crisis are from communities of color, and millions of low-income renters are at risk of losing their homes once both federal and local moratoriums expire. CNN is also reporting this startling fact. Leaders from the Atlanta United Way say 95% of the families it helps fight evictions are Black. 95%. And Congressman-elect Jamal Bowman, he says, you know, it's evil and inhumane to evict someone from their apartment at any time, but especially during a pandemic. Small mortgages and rent should be canceled, and evictions should be blocked for the duration of this horrible pandemic that has killed more than 300,000 people. So it's going to be interesting to see. It is going to be horrifying what we start to see in January. But I think a lot of people are interested to see what happens once the new Congress is set in stone. And depending on what happens in Georgia, these could be two completely different outcomes.
Yeah, but we also, you know, not to really play devil's advocate, but just to really kind of look at the flip side of the situation, is the vast majority of landlords are mom and pop landlords, meaning that they have, you know, one or two rental properties. There are single family homes, which makes up the vast majority of renters. And with a moratorium on rent, you have to think that nothing is stopping their expenses. And a lot of people have doubled up and tripled up on their, on how many people live inside of a residence. So a lot of these buildings, single family homes, like the expenses that landlords incur from having to upkeep the property. The landlords themselves are experiencing with no rent coming in. They're literally existing in these razor thin margins that are being, kind of taxed to the breaking point. So at the same time of people who are, possibly going to lose the place that they're living in, renting, people who have worked a significant portion of their lives to be able to afford rental properties as a means of a revenue stream, they're in danger of losing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, just the one little piece that I want to add on too. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure we can get more details on this, but Congress was supposed to talk about the relief bill and pass it today, and it provides $25 billion in emergency relief. But they were saying that it might give an extension to January 31st into 2021, and I just feel like one extra month, like Brooke said, one extra month does absolutely nothing for people that have been behind 4, 5, 6 months. Even 3, 4 months. One more month does absolutely nothing. Like Brooke was saying, it needs to be extended until the pandemic is over, which we really don't even know when it's going to be.
We have no idea. And Debbie, before we move on, I want to go back to Melissa's point, because I think that is so fascinating, and I love that she brought that up. You brought that up. I'm talking to you. I don't know why I said she. Sorry, Melissa. But because that was a conversation that I've seen a lot of progressive activists talking about. A lot of super progressive activists don't necessarily believe there is a thing as mom and pop landlords, because businesses fail. And if your business is something that is such importance to just basic livelihood, that's first to fail in a pandemic. And they have a hard time. It's like your business is a basic need. You profit off of a basic need. And so for them, no matter how small that business is, that goes into the same bucket as how we've privatized utility companies. And it's just so normal to such a capitalism-filled society that I think people are saying, hey, no, pay attention to what this is. Their business is a basic need for other people. And in a pandemic, they've said you got to hold the government and big banks to the fire.
Yes, agreed.
So, but I love that you brought that up.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Now, more than 1 million people have passed through U.S. airport security checkpoints in the last 2 days, making it obvious that public health pleas to avoid holiday travel are being ignored, despite an alarming surge in COVID-19 cases. This marks the first time that U.S. airports have screened more than 1 million passengers, and this is only since November 29th, right after the Thanksgiving weekend that saw far more travel around the country than had hoped for. Although weather conditions turned colder and COVID-19 cases were already spiking again. Now, hospitals in many areas are being overwhelmed amid the largest outbreak of COVID-19 in the U.S. since March. As you know, that was a time when most Americans were ordered to stay home and avoid interactions with other households. Even more travel is expected as Christmas gets closer. AAA projects that about 85 million people will travel between December 23rd and January 3rd, most of them by car, which would be a drop of nearly 1/3 from a year ago, but still a massive movement of people in the middle of the pandemic. Guys,
guess where I'll be?
Yeah. Where will you be?
Yeah.
Here.
Okay. Oh, you said guess where? I thought you said that's where I'll be.
No planes, trains, or automobiles for Melly Mel.
Absolutely.
No.
I mean, you can't do it.
I'm curious. Have your views on friends, even celebrities, changed when you see how they behave in a pandemic? Because we've seen massive weddings. We, in our personal lives, we see things on Instagram, people going to parties, people still traveling. I'm curious, do your views on people change?
I've been judging.
Well, Brooke, remember, you took the words out of my mouth, Melissa. Literally, Brooke, we were talking about trying not to be judgy, but I've reached that point now where I'm just slightly judgy, like Lil Wayne's daughter. I mean, some of these rappers are having still concerts, clubs are open. Thank God, honestly, people talk about our government in Los Angeles, but I feel like Los Angeles has done a fairly good job. We started lockdown early in the beginning of the pandemic. And so regardless of what people feel about personal mayors and governors and things like that, Los Angeles has done a pretty good job with making us, keeping us on lockdown, because in other places of the world, they are just living their best lives.
They really are. But that's the problem I have. Why not shut down these states all the way across the country so we can go ahead and get a hold of this?
I got one simple answer for you, Romeo. Red and blue. That's it. That's all it is. Okay? Crips and Bloods. No, I'm kidding. In international news, over 300 Nigerian schoolboys were returned Thursday after a devastating kidnapping where students at the Kankara Government Science Secondary School in Katsina were ambushed by members of Boko Haram. Last week, the group claimed responsibility for the attack, marking one of the largest mass school kidnappings. The Katsina Post tweeted images of the 334 boys en route to the forest of the neighboring Zamfara state, where they would undergo medical examinations and treatment, according to the Wall Street Journal. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari, who hails from the Katsina state, condemned the act of terrorism as a cowardly attack on innocent children. But the country's most vulnerable feel that they've been left out without leadership or protection from groups like Boko Haram and bandit groups who target rural areas most at risk to robberies and attacks. All I can say at the end of the story is the fact that I'm just glad that the kids were returned safe and sound. Yes. And there's no reports of serious injuries and or death. I mean, this story was terrifying, and I'm just glad that
there'll be trauma, with them and their parents, because they went through this, they experienced this. So how they're going to feel growing up, waking up every day, not knowing this is going to happen again. So such a sad situation, man. We send prayers that way for sure.
And not every child is home.
Yeah.
Not every. So it's not even, the story isn't even over. It's
334 kids, but it was reported that around or over 400 kids were taken. But they also, if you remember, quite a few of them had gotten away, just like hidden trees and whatnot. Yeah. So, we're not exactly clear on the number of how many may still be, held in captivity. But,
no one should have to go through that.
Yeah.
I agree. All right, guys, this is our part of the first time that we're going to shout out our YouTube soulmates, because you guys are holding it down. Of course, we have to shout out our girl Casey and our girl Kim Johnson holding it down. A lot of people are actually talking about Romeo's suit today.
Looking sharp.
They say he's looking sharp today.
What we doing?
So I just have to start off.
Where we at?
I just want to start off with that, and then also we have another Aaliyah Gilbert is checking in for the first time, and she said, "Hey guys, it's my first time coming back in. It's Monday, and I'm really excited to be here with the soulmates." So she's like, "I'm gonna hang out with us all day." And then also Millennial Dad says this is refreshing. So I'm assuming he's talking about these beautiful black faces here on Fox. So keep on dropping your comments. Hey. I'm scrolling through and I'm picking them out, and we're gonna make sure we shout you out because we are live every day, guys. Okay.